This Raiders shield is tatted on my body. I love the Raiders. You know what I mean? I embody everything that is. And Mark Davis is incredible. You know, me and him have had an incredible relationship since he's been in the league. You know, not many people can say that about, you know, player to owner, but me and him are incredibly close. So, yeah, you know, I have great relationships, you know, throughout this building for the most part.
It's Unnecessary Roughness. Presented by Meineke, doing car care right. Here's your boy Q.
As we kick off hour number 2 of the show, I come in with somewhat of a laugh hearing Maxx Crosby on Golic and Golic when he said, I got great relationships with everyone in the building, for the most part. He had to throw that little for the most part in. And, of course, we know what it is. There's conversations about Maxx Crosby and will he or won't he play with the Raiders moving forward after all the head coaches he's had, after all the seasons he's been with the Silver and Black. Is he come to a bowling point, or is it something that could be smoothed over and he's suiting up for the Raiders next season? Exclusive, Maxx Crosby declares he'll never play for the Raiders again, sets up off-season standoff, I should say. And the man who wrote that piece, Jason La Canfora, sportsboom.us, joins us now on the show. And Jason, thanks so much for your time. Definitely appreciate you. As you can imagine, whenever you talk about Maxx Crosby, Raider Nation is feeling some type of way. You know, is he, isn't he? Is he going to be there with the Raiders in 2026? What is the latest and the greatest? What are you hearing from your side of things when it comes to Maxx Crosby and his intent for the next season?
Well, look, he has certainly, you know, let it be known both to the Raiders and then through his representatives to potential interested teams around the league that he does not intend to play another snap for the Raiders. And he's told them he'll retire rather than play for them again, and that he feels what's the right word? I was going to say violated. That's too strong of a word. But he feels ambushed and hurt by the way they handled his situation down the stretch and basically, you know, scratching him like they did when he felt like he could play as they pursued a draft pick was the last straw. And again, this is known widely around the league. And there's a lot of people who will just jump to the conclusion of, well, he's going to be traded. And that's the part where even some of these executives who are well aware of what's going on and who some of whom intend to make a pitch, they do wonder if this ends up them ultimately being sort of used in a game of cat and mouse. Not that Crosby doesn't want out, but Tom Brady and company don't have to do anything, and it's a really long off season. And at the end of the day, money talks, and everybody's old enough to remember Myles Garrett. This literally just happened last year with one of the rare players who you could say has a similar lineage with that franchise. He's been with a perpetually floundering franchise his whole career. He's been the face of the franchise most of that whole career. He's on a Hall of Fame track. He's been a one-man army his whole career. He did take the money to stay previously, but now he wants out. And same thing, vowed never to play for them again. It's over. And that ultimately, you know, they put the genie back in the bottle. So I know there's been this perception out there that it's almost a fait accompli that he's going to be dealt, but there's a lot of people who are looking at that Raiders situation and saying, even if you get the 2 ones and something else, if they are truly trying to change their culture and do all these things that they seemingly want to do, and if they think Kubiak and Mendoza can get it going on the offensive side, well, why would it make sense to trade your best defensive player when you need a lot of help on that side of the ball as well? So I just don't think it's the slam dunk that some people were sort of setting it up as.
It feels like there's a lot of different angles here and a lot of different scenarios that could be in play, but also the fact that, you know, if Maxx is telling them that he'd rather retire, we all know Maxx. I can't see him not playing, Jason, right? I mean, he's the guy that, as you said, he wanted to play at the end of the season even when he was banged up because he could still go. I can't see him ever saying, I'm not going to play, because we just know how much he wants to play.
Look, and the offseason officially started today, right? The waiver period opens back up. This is a fight for the hearts and minds of NFL GMs and fan bases and getting people worked up about it and trying to create a climate where somebody makes the Raiders an offer they can't refuse. And when you are where he is contractually, really the only card you have to ultimately play is I'm going to take my services and stay at my house. And you know what I mean? You can't win. You couldn't win with me? Well, guess what? Good luck winning without me. So, that's how you have to play the game, and that's what his representatives have to say. And I do think he's completely stuck in right now, But I also have done this long enough to know that these things, again, can ebb and flow. And, they get Mendoza, and Mendoza looks great. And not that he's going to be at minicamp or any of that stuff, but it starts looking good. And maybe they hit a few other home runs in the draft, and maybe they did some things in free agency people didn't think. And, maybe hey, we're going to sweeten the pot even more, whatever. And I don't think this is about money. It's not, but that's how, right? Players say, I threaten to take my services away, and then teams make them feel better. Wow, by throwing more money. I mean,
Myles Garrett.
We just saw it with Myles Garrett. So I'm just saying, while I think everything he's saying is real and visceral, and he's as transparent and as open as it gets, we do have 7 or 8 months before they play, before anybody in this league plays a game that matters. I don't know whether that game's played in Australia or the Moon or Brazil at this point in time. It probably won't be the continental U.S., but whatever. You catch my drift.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe somebody does make an offer they can't refuse, but I could see the Raiders being pretty stuck in about what it's going to take to pry away their best player when they finally think they're going to have elite quarterbacking play for the first time in forever, or maybe potentially consistently elite quarterback play, because obviously Carr flashed there, but it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, and John Spytek, the GM, said the day that Pete Carroll got fired, he was tired of seeing really good Raiders playing for other teams, right? Yeah. And obviously that would be Maxx Crosby. So we'll see where that goes. Again, Jason La Canfora is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. What did you make last week of when he was on his little media tour and doing all these different shows, including Golic and Golic, as you heard him coming in? He was at the Raiders facility, all decked out in Raiders clothes. A lot of Raider Nation felt good about that. But what did you make of it when you saw that?
I think, there's the business side of this and there's the football side of this. And I think even while he's having his representatives, read them the riot act, I'm sure there's a part of his mind that can't picture himself in any jersey other than, he's embodied this. He's personified, not what the Raiders are now. He's a personification of what the Raiders used to be. I look at him and I see Ted Henderson. You know what I mean? And I'm not the only one. So and he knows how the game's played, and there's things you say out loud, and there's things, you have people who get a cut of your money to work for you say in public. And I think the Raider Nation has to matter more to him than most anybody who's put that uniform on in a long time. And I don't think that, him letting the team know where they stand with him is anything he takes lightly, and I don't think it comes particularly easy to him. And I think he's somebody who, if he does end up walking out that door, would probably, at least in terms of with the fan base, would want to go out in the best way possible. But I know the way they handled that situation with him, and in his mind, these games are precious, right? And this is a sport that's inherently violent. And when I'm able to play and I have a contract with you and I want to, I want to uphold that contract and I want to be as competitive as I can be and I want to win. And you're inherently kind of going against all of that with how you're determining you want to use my services. I think that cut was real.
Yeah, I could believe it. I could believe it because I know that he's very adamant about he wants to win and he does everything he can to be prepared and ready to go each and every game. And, he's talked about playing the game for free as, the ones that really love the game. They'll always say that. Now, they're not going to play for free, but they'll say that. They'll throw it out there because that's how much they care about the game. So I've seen reports that it would take a Micah Parsons type trade for the Raiders to be willing to part ways with them. That was a 2026 first-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick, and a good player in Kenny Clark. Do you think that that's the kind of trade that the Raiders, it would pique their interest?
I think that starts conversations, but I think it may, I think it may take more than that. And that's even what, one of the GMs I told, he's like, dude, we'll throw 2-1s at them, probably. I think my owner will go along with that. And I think there's other people who throw 2-1s at them, but how high do they want those ones to be? You know what I mean? There's always a way to counter it. And, Parsons, you had to do a whole new deal, and this guy's, you know what I mean? We've already got him. He's cost efficient, so he's worth more. And look what Parsons did for Green Bay. He got hurt, but look what the difference he made when he got there, and that's what we're giving you. And so, no, I think they would probably be stuck in. and want more. And that's where the longer that goes, and let's face it, once you get on the other side of the draft, you know what I mean? If you're that player and they haven't done it, you got to be sweating a little bit.
No, I hear you. We got a text from our guy Wally in Reno and said that you had mentioned something about Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator. Yes. What are your thoughts on Schwartz to the Raiders?
He wanted it, and they wanted him. And that's why he was so stuck in and adamant with Cleveland. And then ultimately Cleveland wouldn't let him out. And they've come to some sort of agreement where he's basically saying he's not going to coach in 2026. But I do still wonder at some point in time. I'm not sure he'll be a coordinator, and look, I haven't been privy to all the language in this renewed contract that they've done. But I do wonder if some point in time, if somebody gives them some sort of trade compensation or financial compensation, if they let him go and consult for somebody else. Like when he's, they're saying he's got to stay out of coaching in 2026. I mean, there's a fine line between coaching, consulting, assisting, whatever. But that's the guy who they had identified for Kubiak to be the best possible scenario. And everything I've heard is that he was excited about it, and that's why he was so stuck in. But the Browns were also stuck in. So I would just stay tuned on that one. It's a long off season. And once the Browns have their whole staff put together, maybe there's something they could do to let Jim Schwartz provide some semblance of services somewhere else. But I think it would have made all the sense in the world for Clint Kubiak.
What kind of compensation do you think the Browns might want to get in return for Jim Schwartz services?
Oh, I mean, I think they'd probably want, a draft pick. And there were teams that were interested in Schwartz. But, the whole thing is, okay, well, if we don't get him now, do we really, and we're a rebuilding team, do we want to go down that road now when the worst case scenario is we wait 11 months, you know what I mean, and then we get him for nothing? And are we really going to turn the corner? And, we'll have to compete with other teams for him. And, if you trade for him now and you do the extension with him, you don't have to. But there's also probably not going to be, there better not be, 10 head coaching openings again next year, like there were this year. So maybe there's a little less, fewer teams looking to rebuild their entire coaching staff. So, but there's always that sort of, fine line of consulting or whatever. Mm-hmm. Can he go somewhere work? He's not allowed to go inside the building, but he is allowed to review tape or whatever. And that, sort of greases the wheels to have a leg up to bring him in as maybe the full-blown coordinator or whatever, associate head coach, defense, whatever, for 2027.
We'll close out with this. It's been fantastic. We definitely appreciate your time. What did you think about Clint Kubiak, the job he's done as the OC of the Seahawks, and obviously you're going to take the job for the Raiders as their head coach? What do you think about him moving forward?
Look, he was going to get one of these jobs. That was pretty clear. There were multiple teams that were willing to wait for him. The Raiders were hardly alone there. He preferred the Raiders to other options. I think that thing was done on a wink-wink basis, much sooner than it sort of even got out. I have a little bit of concerns just about him growing into his voice. And, it's one thing to be a master offensive tactician or defensive tactician. It's one thing to master, game plan preparation. It's one thing to master halftime adjustments and getting the right play off the play sheet at the right time. There's so much more that goes into being a successful NFL head coach. And that's why I think, frankly, having someone like Schwartz running the other side of the ball would be imperative. He's not really an authoritarian figure. Like, I don't think he has a head coaching voice yet, and I think it's going to take some time to develop that. But I also think when you have the unique situation they have with the pick they have and with, a college quarterback, a groomed college quarterback who's worthy of it, then I understand leaning into the play calling, QB guru, schematic side of things, knowing that, over time, look at his lineage, his dad, how long his dad's been in the league, the success of that coaching family tree going all the way back to Mike Shanahan. So I get it. Someone was going to do it, but I do worry sometimes about some of those guys being more the leader of a side of the ball than maybe a leader of 53 men in the offseason, 90 men.
Yeah, that's fair. It is. I mean, until we see it, we don't know, right? It's just what we think. It's what it looks good. It looks good. It sounds good. He's got to put it together. And I know Mike McDonald, he had to find his voice as well as a head coach. And, well, now he's a Super Bowl champ. So, it could work out really well, right? It could work out really well.
The Raiders are overdue for some good luck in that department.
Yes.
I'll say that much.
Yeah, you're not lying about that. Again, your piece, Maxx Crosby declares he'll never play for the Raiders again, sets up off-season standoff. That's sportsboom.us. Jason La Canfora. Jason, great stuff, man. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes just to kind of clarify what you're hearing.
Sure. No, thank you guys for reaching out. Appreciate you.